This show is sponsored by the Comics Shop. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to another Tuesday Chinwag. I am Leigh Chalker. I am the creator of Battle for Bustle. Now, we have a very special guest this evening. Now, it's Mr. Aidan Roberts, who, just for this very special occasion, has decided that we are going to film this in the driver's seat of his Prius. Now, there is a reason for this, which we will disclose as the show goes on. But the man's ready to drive. I'm ready to drive. Let's go Interstellar Overdrive, Piper at the Gates of Dawn, Pink Floyd style, and let's rock and roll with the show. So, people that have not seen the show, it is based on 6 prompting words, questions, which are who, what, where, when, why, and how. And sometimes on a Tuesday Chinwag, we only answer really one of them and we talk the rest of it. This show is fluid. This is the way we like it. And we like to talk and we like to just shoot the breeze on a lovely Tuesday evening from the driver's seat of a Prius. Now, I'm going to welcome Mr. Aidan Roberts. How are you, sir?
Jolly good, Leigh. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Oh man, like it's awesome. It's like, I know for people at home, they may be thinking, wow, this is a bit of an awkward, sort of situation. But the show is fluid, and I really like the fact that Aidan has styled it up, man. And the man has driven up hills, down hills, all over the place, and he has found the perfect spot so that we can talk. And I think that's, like there's some things that like impress me, man. And that's one of the most impressive, like displays of dedication to a Tuesday Chinwag. So
commitment to the art,
yeah, man. Yeah, it's good.
So I do need to put this disclaimer in. I'm the vehicle is not moving and I'm not actually driving it anymore, so I'm being safe. I'm currently parked outside the Shell Coles Express in Bexley.
Yeah.
Wave to me if you're driving past. So hopefully the hopefully the Shell man doesn't come and tell me to move on, because he's supposed to only be here for 15 minutes, but we'll work with that if he does.
Mate, we've got extreme circumstances going on. This is,
That's right.
This is a Chinwag. And, if he comes out and, he wants to know what's going on, we can drop him into the spare seat there, man.
Yeah.
He could have a kebab, like a Pepsi Max. I don't know if you eat in the car, that may not happen, but, anything can happen.
We'll get him involved.
Yeah. The more the merrier, man. It's all in good spirits. So, this is what it is. Now, Aidan, I'm going to start with the first one that I start with everyone, man. And you answer this and you take it however you like, mate. Who?
Who am I? My name's Aidan Roberts. I'm 44. I'm a dad, and I work at Sydney University. But I'm also now award-winning comic artist, which I never saw coming, and is a great delight. That's my current trajectory. I've been a musician all my life, professionally for a number of years. Which I can tell you more about in due course. I'm just a family man, just sort of trying to make beautiful stuff that hopefully resonates with people. And the fact that I'm on your show means that something I've done has resonated with at least a few people, which is all I could ever hope for. That's that's me in a nutshell.
Oh, that's a very fine nutshell, mate. You know what I mean? As we get further into the show, we'll try and crack that nutshell and see what makes you up. So, man, congratulations on like the Comics Arts Award of Australia, like the number
Thank
one
you.
man for his for this year.
Yeah,
And
it's unreal. It's
your
really cool.
award-winning comic book, Dead City Lullabies. So, congratulations on that. I haven't had the opportunity to talk to you, like face to face to congratulate you, man. But that's a pretty big thing, man. So, like,
Thank you so much. Yeah,
no,
it's a great honor.
did you, like you've where did Dead's, you've been a musician, so you're creative,
Mm,
because you'd be really surprised how many people I've met that do comic books that are musicians, and like just creative people, man. The juices are flowing, so you just get that stuff out, mate. You know what I mean? Like painting, they
yeah.
like doing everything, got a lot to say, colors, black and white, tunes, like whatever's happening, make you feel good. Dead City Lullabies, where did that come from? Like, what
Where did
was
it come from?
hmm?
Well, I was. It initially came to being when I was doing the music. I was doing a live score for a production of Hamlet at the Bondi Pavilion, and whenever I'm doing those sorts of things, I always dream up other projects. Like when I'm on stage or in the dressing rooms or whatever, something's always ticking away. And I was coming home from that show late one night, and I was on a train going across the harbour bridge. I remember looking down at the lights of the boats in the harbour, and for some reason I just had this image of the city going dark and these little boats being like the very few people in existence left, and they were sort of like searching the um, remains of this city for like a way forward or sort of like sanctuary. I don't know. I just had that image. I was like, man, that's cool, and it just gave me this idea for just writing a thing like a short story. I think it was like a series of short stories about people, just a few people, or maybe just even one person, uh, preparing for and witnessing the end of a civilization and where they were going to go next. Um, that was the extremely vague, nebulous idea that came to me. So I went back to Hamlet the next evening and was telling uh, David Ritchie, a very dear actor friend of mine who's no longer with us. He was playing the king, and I told him about this. He says, "Oh, that's a good idea for a one-man play." Of course, he thinks like that. And I was like, "Yeah, I could write it as a series of like monologues, you know." And so I sort of did that. I wrote these 9 little 2-3 page things, and I showed it to him, and he really, really loved it, which was really cool. He was a bit of he was an absolute expert in language and prose and Shakespeare and performance and literature. Like that was his world. And he said, "I'd like to workshop this with you, and we can come around to my house and we can sort of work on it." And so we worked up this text, and it was going to be that he wanted to perform it on stage, just as like this immortal character that witnesses the end of civilizations of various kinds, both real and like completely, science fiction, fantasy sort of civilizations. And then whilst we were like doing that and I was hearing him read it, I thought, oh, maybe I can make it like a concept album like Jeff Wayne's The War of the Worlds, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah.
With this great actor's voice performing it, but it has this musical score that sort of propels it. A dumb, dorky idea, but I thought you could do it well. You could do it differently, and that was the next stage it had. And I was like, oh, it could have a book with all this artwork that it's a very 70s concept album thing. This is like 2006.
Yeah.
I was having all these thoughts, and it never quite got there, like over the year, I actually recorded David reading the whole thing, which I have on tape. And I was going to turn it into something, and I kind of never did. And he was always hassling me about it. Sorry, this is a long story, but this the
No,
tale of
man,
it.
you go, mate.
Um,
You go.
and he would hassle me every now and then. Now, Aidan, Dead City Lullabies, you know, what's happening with that? I was like, yeah, I promise, David. I promise I will turn it into something. I promise. He says, it's very good, you know. You should turn it into something. And even people would say, oh, David's been asking about that sci-fi thing of yours. And then, gosh, it was 6 or 7 years ago now. David passed away to um, undisclosed illness, which was devastating to the whole community. And of course, what immediately came back to me was like, I promised him I'd finish it. So, damn it, I'm going to finish it. I'm going to turn it into something, but I don't want to make it into a concept album anymore. I want to make it a comic book because I thought that's the most full way of telling the story. That's like going to service this broad, fractured sort of big concept tale I had in mind. And it's visual, and yeah, and maybe I can write a soundtrack to it that's like separate. And so that is what I started doing. This is about 2018 or so. And I realized I wasn't good enough to draw it how I wanted it to be. So I spent years getting better.
Yep.
Drawing and doing fan art and just like doing concept art for this, which I still have all of it. Some of it's really cool, some of it's terrible. But eventually, during lockdown, I thought, and I was studying anatomy and stuff just to get my craft up, get the chops up. I was like, I think I'm good enough to draw this thing now. So I chose one of the stories. And I was like, I'm going to make that the first like chapter of it and see where it goes. And that is what became Dead City Lullabies #1, which is out there in the world and won the Ledger Award. That 40 pages. It's the beginning of an arc that I've very clearly mapped out, and it's going to tell a really cool tale within that sort of framework that I've just described in the last 10, 12 minutes. But yeah, that's Dead City Lullabies. It's what it is. And there's all these other tales that are only connected to it by a thread that I can tell eventually, but in other mediums, who knows? But this is where it's living now, is a comic book, and yeah, that's what I'm pursuing headlong.
Man, I think that's beautiful, man. That story, I love it. And don't apologize for telling stories, man, because
That's
that's
what we're here
what
to
we
do,
like
right?
doing. That's what we like doing, man. This is the fluidity of the chinwag, man. It's I you had me earlier when we were prepping for the show and you were driving around, and we've been talking via message for a couple of weeks, like trying to get it all together and happening for the episode. And I was picking up what you were putting down there, and man, you dropped like the War of the World soundtrack, dude. There is barely a day goes by where I do not try and use that bloody ooh sound, like in some regard, man. Like I kick my toe and that sound comes out of me, man. Or my cat's doing something crazy, and I'm like, doing that. Like,
I love
man,
that. Love it.
dude.
It's one of the greatest works in recorded history. I think it is amazing. And on its surface, it appears a bit dorky until you really listen very closely to it and really appreciate the art of it. It is so beautifully structured and recorded and performed and conceived. Like it's perfect. It's just like, and there'd never been anything like it since. Prior, and there hasn't been anything like it since. Like it's a one-off. It's a complete one-off in in entertainment history. I think it's beautiful.
Man, well, that's what makes that's what makes it amazing, is because like I've got so many memories with that album, man. Like traveling from Townsville to Gundagai, and that was a favorite back in the cassette day in the car, you know. And mum and
Great
dad,
for a late,
man.
great for a late night drive. Yeah.
Oh, dude, I don't drink anymore, right? Like I'm a sober individual. It's you know, like these things happen in life where you become addicted to certain things, and drinking was you know, my downfall. But thankfully, you know, like got through all that.
I'm
But
glad to hear it, man.
thanks, man. I appreciate that. It was an effort, but you know, I'm on the other side of it now and enjoying life. But one of the things, man, that I used to really like doing, and I'm not sure that neighbours at varying houses that I used to dwell in used to particularly like me coming home at 3 o'clock some nights. And you know, you just sort of, I'll have a beer at home because you know I don't really feel like going to bed. And then you know, like it was more than you know, like times I could count on both hands that the War of the Worlds would suddenly be cranking out at 4 a.m. in the morning there. And I had many moments to that. Richard Burton's voice is probably one of the, you know, how he reads that as well to, you know, like get you into it, man.
It's phenomenal.
Beautiful thing. And memories there, man. That's a beautiful thing. It's
Shall I do the opening lines for you?
Yes.
Do you want to hear that?
Okay. Yes. I'm waiting.
All right, here we go. No one would have believed in the last years of the 19th century that human affairs were being watched from the timeless worlds of space. No one could have dreamed that we were being scrutinized as someone with a microscope studies creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. Few men even considered the possibility of life on other planets, and yet, across the gulf of space, minds immeasurably superior to ours regarded this earth with envious eyes, and slowly and surely they drew their plans against us. Bunk, bunk, bunk. There you go. I've listened to it a few times.
Man, I tell you, you're bringing a tear to my eye, Aidan. Oh man, I'm loving this right now. If that Caltex dude comes out here right now and asks you to move, 15 minutes is up, you wind that window down and you bust that on him, man.
And he'll be like, okay, sir, okay, another 15 minutes is fine.
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm reenacting the War of the Worlds here. I may need 90. You know what I mean? And then, mate, but what would be even more perplexing, Aidan, is if the dude busted out with the next verse of what Richard Burton was singing. That would be awesome. But it probably won't happen, but somewhere it may. And that would be very exciting. But we can live in our mind. This is the theatre of the mind, man. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, that was a nerdy moment.
Yeah, that's cool though, man. You know, like I guess we're all nerds. Oh, there we go. It's all right, Aidan.
It's all right. Don't worry about it.
I'm not worried about it, man.
Stupid thing. Hang on, let me stupid.
Yep. See, it's action. This is action. Yeah, I like it.
Okay, there we go.
There we go. Look at this.
Sorry about that, folks.
Nah, man. Like this is good. I like this stuff, man. You know, like if everything was in order, man, it'd be so boring. You know, like sometimes you got to have a little bit of life, don't you? You know what I mean? And, you know, like. But you know Absolutely. What? We missed an opportunity there. We both could have gone, ooh, you know. But anyway, it's.
Oh, mate, the night's young, I guess.
Yeah, this is true. So let's remember and if anyone's wondering what the hell I'm going on about with that effect, then feel free to listen to the War of the Worlds. It's a double album and it's pretty damn good. As you've probably seen the two of us, you know, rattling on about it for about 10 minutes now and enjoying ourselves. So, mate, with I really like this idea of where was your skill level at, like when you committed to the comic book format, right? You just went, boom, this is the way I'm going. I'm heading off in that direction. This is the way. Where was your skill level at? Were you already drawing, or was it?
Oh, of course, yeah. Yeah. I was. like I said, I've been drawing all my life. Like I used to draw very silly comics in high school, which any of my friends watching will remember with a snicker. But nothing. I mean, comics can be anything, right? But for
Yeah,
me, I had a very specific um, aesthetic, I suppose, in mind. Is that I wanted to be able to draw dynamic. Like I can draw stuff quite well. Like I've always understood perspective and things, but it was people that I had the most problem with. I found I couldn't convincingly design and manipulate a character consistently from drawing to drawing. And I tried to work out why that was. Like everything looked a little bit yeah, pretty amateurish and edgy and clunky. And I had to work out why. I'd look at all my favorite comic artists and go, why does that look so awesome? And why can't I easily do that? And obviously, time and practice, but knowing what you're drawing, that is the thing. So drawing, primarily human characters,
yeah,
had to know how a human body works and moves and how to draw clothing on those characters, proportions, anatomy is one of the biggest things, movement, all that stuff. So I just had to do a lot of study over the last 5 years of my favorite artists
yeah,
and fundamentals. So I just needed to bump up my fundamental skills, and I did that,
yeah,
and I'm still doing that every day. I'm always
yeah.
learning. So now the second issue, which I'm slowly chipping away at, um, uh, the art is arguably better technically than the first, but yeah, it's always evolving and changing and improving. But like I was good enough to draw some cool looking stuff, but I wanted to make it. I wanted it to have an authenticity and um, how do you put it? A believability when you look at it. So
Yeah.
it's like watching a movie. You don't question what you're looking at if all the elements are in place. You just
Yeah.
enjoy it. And so I wanted it to be slick and stylish and look great. So I knew I had a bit more work to do before I could get it there. Yeah.
Man, the commitment to the cause that you're talking about is amazing because, like I haven't read the comic book. I haven't been lucky enough to get my hands on it to read it, but we have shared artwork and I've seen some of your artwork and stuff. And it's beautiful, man. Like, it's,
Thank you.
it's lovely. I was quite taken aback by it, as obviously a lot of other people were. I mean, because you don't just flippantly get given, like a Ledger Award, man, the number one thing.
Mm,
You know what I mean? Like you got to have a bit of something going for you. But the one thing
yeah.
that you've already shown me, man, is the commitment to your, like your cause. I love the fact too, man, because like I think for someone that draws like as I do, one of the things that I gravitate to in other people that draw as well is, man, you are always learning. It's like you never know where you're going to
Yeah.
learn from. It's like you've always got to, like, even a painting can teach you something, even if it's got absolutely nothing to do with the genre that you're actually drawing. It can still spark motivation, an idea, anything in your mind. And people watching. I love people watching, man. Sometimes people might think I'm a bit weird, but I like to have a cigarette every now and then and go and sit down and just watch people, like, because you learn things. Because one thing is, man, like I reckon, is like bodies are weird, like
Hmm.
they are. I mean, like you can look at a body, and no offense to anyone with the. I have a particular body that I'm thinking of to give you an example at this time. I'm not going to mention the person because I don't know who the person is. They were just someone that was randomly walking along and did that weird. When you're sitting at a park, not necessarily at a park bench, but you're out and about somewhere and you're just chilling. It's taking it in, man. And there's someone a bit like, how pigeons always look busy, like even though they got nothing to do, pigeons are busy, man. They always look like they
Yeah.
got something to be and shit, they're always moving. Well, you get people, that even though they're casually walking along the path, they've obviously got somewhere in their mind to go. And that's okay too. But they get that point where, they're walking and they're like their heel or the front of their foot, like does the whole, and they do that weird misstep and they look around that no one, like is watching. Does anyone see me? Like I'm not cool anymore in my Leica and my $500, like designer, like gym shit that I'm just going to get sweaty out. That's cool. And then as they're walking around, they're doing weird movements, man, and you get them on particular angles, And this one particular individual, I was looking at them like, this is only like a fortnight ago, and I was thinking, how the fucking hell have you got your body into that shape? But, they did. So I'm, like ever learning, man, like it's,
I mean, everybody is different and unique.
Yes.
There is an average standard, I suppose, when you are looking at learning the proportions of a human body, because they vary so wildly. So you have to sort of start with the reasonably fit, not yet middle-aged, classic human figure is the best place to start learning how the bits all fit together, and then you can break those rules and exaggerate things. And so if I need to draw a character who is, say, very hunched over or very fat or has there's some really defining physical characteristic that you need to keep consistent, you have to think, why is it doing that? Why are they really hunched over? Have they got is something going on in their spine, or or is it something to do with their front or whatever? Like, understanding what's happening and why it's doing that gives you like a little catalog of clues to use when you're drawing them. So, I mean, my character in Dead City Lullabies, the central character, Eleanor, is a 30-something Hispanic-ish, human woman with dark hair, a fairly easy, recognizable sort of person to draw, and she doesn't have any pronounced disability or anything to get in the way of her being a perfectly free-flowing human. So I guess I've chosen an easy character to draw in that regard. But yeah, it's an interesting. And lately I look at the way anything natural moves all the time and go, oh, that's interesting. Like I like watching dogs, because dogs, some of them are really bred to not move efficiently. And there's some that are these unbelievable hunters, and the way their muscles fall and move and like I find fascinating. And so I'm trying to draw a lot of animals lately, and that can again inform both human and non-human characters that you may draw down the track. You're always looking, always learning, taking note of how things work and move, how things fall and how they explode and stuff. Like, you got to think of everything when you're drawing a comic, especially if you're doing it all yourself. You have to think about how the whole universe around the action works and why it's like that. You don't have to. You can draw a very surreal, figurative, minimalist comic. I guess I'm not going for that. I'm going for a cinematic, realistic, magical realism sort of thing. Anyway, so to wrap that up, I'm always paying attention to real world physics and cause and effect, and applying it to whatever I'm drawing. And a good way to practice that is to draw people in the park. You see someone who looks a bit odd, that's cool. If they stay where they are for 5 minutes and you have a sketchbook, just done a quick gesture sketch, we call it. that can be very satisfying and really good practice. I used to do
Yeah.
that when I was traveling with a show I was doing all over the world. Instead of taking a photo somewhere, I'd stop and draw it because I had time. Didn't have
Yeah.
a wife and a child, like I thankfully do now. So I had the time to just sit there. I'm going to sit there and draw that for half an hour. It's a
Yeah.
great way to engage with what you're looking at and form memories and stuff. Anyway,
It's a great way to like. No, this is a beautiful train of thought, man. Because I too like. I mean, predominantly I draw comic book stuff, but I mean, like I do quite enjoy um, drawing intuitive things. I guess symbolic things. You know what I mean? That mean
mm,
something to me that don't necessarily mean things to anyone else. But like I have often found that like my comic books over time, and this is just I've always been I gravitate to nature, but I've always lived in a small city. I don't particularly like cities, but I see I guess in its own way, you know, you got your trees and your roots and nature and things like that. But then at the same time, in a visual sense, I can also see like cords and wires, you know, like taking on a similar shape and form and things like that, you know. And I like to incorporate those sorts of things, you know, like the good and the bad, the duality of, you know, like imagery and stuff like that. That's predominantly why I like black and white artwork, man, because, you know, like I find black and white artwork is like real balls to the wall sort of shit. You know what I mean? You can't make mistakes with that. Is that someone backing in? You know, like
no,
is that?
no, no. I actually had to just open the window
No,
to
that's all right. You
let
want
some
to get
air
some
in. It's
air in
getting
there, man. Yeah,
gotta
get a
get
bit
some air.
hot in there. You might pass out. That'd be a short interview. Don't do that to us, man.
But it's while you're on that topic, um, draw something that I really love and I haven't done enough of is restricting myself to just black ink. I've got all the nib pens and all the markers you can imagine, and
Mm.
um, but committing to just light and shadow and hatching the differences in between and stuff is a nerve-wracking art, and even if you're doing it digitally. Um, I remember someone I was doing an online course with. I think it was Proco actually, who a lot of the comic artists watching will be familiar with his stuff. He was saying, "Don't be afraid of the dark," which is shadow is one of the most important things to convey uh, form and mood and everything. It's like the way light falls and the shadows it casts is crucial to making artwork read, you know? Um, so, yeah, that's something I like. Like you'll notice at Dead City Lullabies when you get around to reading it, there's not a lot of deep blacks in it.
Mm.
It looks more like a movie. It's
Yeah,
got like shades of everything.
yeah.
Um, and that's just how I sort of am most comfortable working. But I'm going to try before too long. Maybe I'll do one of the Dead City Lullaby stories. I just want to do it black and white,
Yeah.
because it's got a starkness and a sort of comic-y like bang that I really am in awe of when I look at a finished inked page. It's just black ink. It's like, man, that's real comic art. You know what I'm doing is sort of like, yeah, it's hard. Yeah, I feel like a little bit of a rookie, even though I'm a pretty good drawer.
I think you're
Yeah,
downplaying yourself there, man. I think you're downplaying yourself from what I've seen. You're being very humble, which, you know, like
I am.
you should
I am
be
humble.
because you're good. You're very
Yeah,
good.
well, thank you, Matt. Well, everyone has their own thing, their own style, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that is something I'd like to explore more. Is um, boldly going into the blacks. That's something I'm going to pursue. You've reminded me.
Yeah, it's yeah, it can be scary. It's uh it just certainly can be. There's nerve-wracking moments, man, especially like because I work on paper. I have always drawn on paper since I was a kid. I guess it's something I'm comfortable with. And it's what I feel natural with, you know what I mean? It's something that I know. I guess it's I like the touch and the feel and the scratch of the pen on the
Of
paper and
course.
stuff, you know. But you know, everyone's got their own style. Everyone's got their own method. Everyone's got their own, you know, like just their way. And I think that's healthy, man. And again, we come back to the point of like, you've always got to keep learning, man. You've always got to look at different
Yeah.
ways of doing things, different storytelling, different stuff. So I think it's an awesome attitude to have, to just always want to improve, man. Because the other thing is too, I think, you know, I don't know, like there's always improvement, man. You know, like yourself,
Mm.
your artwork, anything, man. You know, if you stop, you're sort of like a shark, aren't you? They stop swimming, they die. So it's like I sort of look at that with artwork, man. You know, and stories and things. You know, it always get
Yeah.
better. You know, and
Yeah.
it's
And you lose your chops. You do. Um,
yeah,
so you have to keep practicing. Um, yeah. I mean, Dead City Otherwise is actually a hybrid. The pages are penciled and inked
yeah,
on paper, and then I scan it all in, and then I go to town on it
yeah,
with the
yeah,
colors and the sort of, you know, the effects that you can do in that regard, which is what makes it more cinematic. But I chose, interestingly, for DCL to use ballpoint pens
yeah,
to do the inking. Um, After I read this book by a guy named Marcus Matteo Mestre, an amazing uh, illustrator who I'll send you a link to if you're not familiar with his stuff. He's written a series of instructional books which are very generous and very, very in depth and very readable, very enjoyable. And his
yeah,
artwork is just like jaw-droppingly good. And he wrote one book on like inking techniques with ballpoint pen. It's really
yeah, yeah,
specific. And I was like, and I picked it up, ordered it, and it really inspired me. I was like, you serious? With these cheap Bic pens,
yeah,
you can really make good art, right? You can actually be very, very expressive with them, very light, very heavy.
yeah.
And it was, so the first issue of this was a bit of an experiment in that, and it has a unique look to it, which I really like. And you get that real, like you're talking about, that real tactility of a rolling ball on nice, you know, thick paper. It feels great to draw on. That's my favorite
Yeah.
way of working too. Absolutely, on big paper. I struggle
Oh
drawing
man,
tiny. I like
I
drawing
love
big.
A3.
Yeah,
I could probably work faster, you know, like on A4 and stuff like that. But there's just something for me that's super satisfying, man, about, you know, A3 paper.
yeah. It's
I
It's
mean,
like a poster size. You know, it's good chunky size.
man,
And then when that shrinks down just slightly for a comic book, art looks good.
yeah, yeah. I like the fact that, man. So what you're telling me there, and I want to, because man, if what you just said to me is like, if I can correctly, you know, like suggest, you decided to take your first issue of your comic book that essentially has been with you since 2006,
Mm,
since your great friend
mm,
said to you, mate, this is good. You know, like think of it. It's just gestated. It's come to you backwards and forwards at different times in your life and things like that. You
yeah.
finally get to the point where you're like, all right, I'm going to have a crack at this. I'm feeling all right.
Mm,
And you decided to go with a ballpoint pen to ink.
that's right. That's
And
right.
you'd never done that before. You'd read it and went, that's resonating with me. I'm going
Yeah.
to do
Yeah, that's essentially how it happened. But of
that,
course, I did some
man.
experiments
Respect.
first.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was a
yeah,
risk,
yeah. That's cool.
but also you have to. I realized that if you want to get something done, eventually you have to ignore the little voice in your head that says,
Uh,
well, what if it's not good enough? I was like, well, if it's not good enough, I'll try again.
yeah.
And as I was drawing it, and I've actually got all the original pages for sale on my website, but no one's bought any yet. So I've still got this beautiful big thick wad of A3 size paper with these beautiful ballpoint drawings that I'm
Mm,
super proud of. I worked really hard on that,
mm,
um, and it worked. Like it worked, and I thought, cool. Well, that's the look for this one. I might, use the nib pens and whatever. I might do a fully digital project here and there. Like it doesn't really matter for this. That's working. So I just need to keep buying that paper. It's the same paper. It's a Fabriano Italian stuff. It's perfect. Like I found it's super white and
yeah.
very cold pressed, sort of for watercolor, but it's very, very smooth.
So is
And
it
that,
it's smooth, like you
yeah,
don't have the paper that's got the slight little grains across the ever so delicate grains, and some of the paper.
very, very, very slight texture to it, but like
Mm,
not enough that's going to worry a ballpoint pen.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, no, it's very, yeah, that's the paper I found that felt the best,
yeah,
and so yeah, I just keep ordering. It's like $50 a pad though, so
yeah, yeah,
you gotta
yeah,
you don't muck around. Well, you muck around on like butcher's paper, and then you commit to that. Um,
Oh man, if I had all the money back that I have spent on drawing pads and pens
mm.
and nibs and ink in my life, I could be the king of
Well, you
probably
know what you know what
industrial.
though, you
Mm,
know what I've also learned to try to be economical, and if you find a surface that feels good to draw on, that's like
you hit it.
the back of a some printed publication from my work or whatever, it feels good, and I can draw, make a drawing on that I can use. I will.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, like especially with interest rates what they are, um, you have to be economical as well. And
Yeah,
also
yeah.
that's where digital drawing really is handy, and I'm quite
Yep.
good at that too. There's some stuff I've done that I started on paper and I brought into Procreate. I mostly use on the iPad,
Yep.
um, and I've made brushes, digital brushes, like constructed them very carefully out of raw elements in the great um, like brush studio that's in that program,
Yep.
that looks utterly convincingly like the ballpoint pen. So I'm able to, if I screw something up, I know I can convincingly digitally fix it later as well. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, that's um, that's one of the blessings of the day and age we live in, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
How
yeah,
long does
all,
it
all the
take you?
tools, all the tools.
Yeah, man, use them all. Why not?
Mm,
Whatever, man. Whatever makes it work. I mean, it's working for you. But like, see,
yeah,
I don't know why, man. Like, I love the weirdest details, man. I mean, I don't know.
yeah, yeah. I
You know,
like
normal
weird
life,
rough edges
normal
too. I
life
do.
can go on, Aidan. But I want to know this detail, man. To get in Procreate and, get your ballpoint pen brush. For
Mm,
someone that doesn't use Procreate, I find this fascinating. How
mm.
long did you spend getting
Probably
that?
about, oh yeah, making that brush happen.
Yeah.
Probably took me a full night mucking around, and
Uh,
then coming back to it the next day and going, right, I'm going to try and draw that. I remember it was like the main character's face, I think.
hmm,
So I'm just going to, like her eye was a bit weird. Just a bit too, one of them was too high or something. I was like, I'm just going to try drawing that panel again digitally. And and I found I was able, it doesn't feel as nice. I've got to
yep.
say that. The Apple Pencil on the glass does not feel as nice as drawing on paper.
Yep.
But I achieved the same result. It looked
Yep.
great. So I could just do it all digitally, but it just does. It's not as fun. It's a
Yeah.
bit laborious and it's a bit techy, and you got to recharge the iPad, and you
Yeah.
can't do it, you know, um, in a tent in a, if you know what I mean. It's
Yeah,
like the technology is awesome, but it really is for the finishing stages. I feel like in what I do, like I really do like to. If I had to do it by candlelight, I could. I like that feel, you know. But that was a journey in itself. It's like, I'm going to make this brush happen. And it just so happens that this software that was developed by Tasmanians
and we were only just
is,
speaking about the awesome quality of their internet earlier on, mate.
I don't know how they managed to make Procreate in Hobart. I don't know how they managed to make that happen.
No, lucky they've
But they
got that
did,
super.
and they showed the world that they can create industry-leading, incredibly artist-friendly tool for the iPad that works for someone like me I'm a pen and paper guy, but it works for me. It really is an option. It's an option.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, I grab at all the things that can make the thing happen, because that's the world we live in now, and that's awesome.
Yeah, man. I love talking to other people that love to draw and their little idiosyncrasies, I guess, I find that what you're talking to me here, like from what I've seen of your artwork, allows me to see more of you, which allows me to see more of your artwork, which joins you together and just reinforces the fact that you are putting down unique work, man. You think about things, and I like that. Man, I'm gonna go back to real basic, like young Aidan. Like you're scribbling and you're diddling and you're doing all your thingalings and stuff as a young fella, and you're creative and you're playing guitar. You've said that, but recently you had to stand in and play some bass. Like for your
I did,
mates.
yeah.
Yeah. How did that go? Before I go any further,
It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, nailed it. Like, this is my oldest friend, Liam. We had, I guess we in theory still have, a band called Bells Will Ring. And yeah, I've known Liam 35 years now. And we've done a lot. We grew up together. We've done a lot of music and silly stuff together. And his solo project is called Lewis Goldmark, which does sound like a, um, Lower East Side jeweler from the
I was
70s.
gonna say, I'm sure
Right?
I've got a jeweler in Townsville called that.
So listen, look up Lewis Goldmark on Spotify, people. Lewis Goldmark. And I did all the cover art for all these singles and the album and stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was originally going to be playing guitar with him at this gig, as supporting our old friends, the Love Tones, at Marrickville Bolo, which is a great venue, by the way. And yeah, and the bassist dropped out and stuff. So Liam's like, "Oh, could you play bass?" And yeah, so I never play bass live, so I really sort of did my homework.
How long did you have to learn the songs?
I mean, I knew them in my sort of mind, and because I know Liam and how his songs like click, I sort of knew them already, but I'd never tried playing them. So it didn't take that long. I just had to sit down with the record and like write some cues out and just sort of like get it right. And then in the rehearsal studio, finessing the details and going, Liam uses a lot of what we call slash chords, which are like there'll be a chord, and then the bass hits a different note that's outside of that turns it into another chord. A lot of that happening. So I had to sort of work out what is the bass doing in that chord and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, fast forward, the gig was awesome. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So that's the other side of what I do, music.
I know this may sound weird, but from the story you just told me, you've obviously had to use a lot of intuition to, like pick up and feel and vibe, like the first time bass with these songs and that. So in a
Yeah.
strange way, man, your creativity has and your like your intuition has shone through with your musicianship, which shows through to your artwork, as you've already discussed with making brushes,
Yeah.
what feels right for you and stuff like that, man. You
Yeah.
know?
A combination of technical know-how and then using that as sort of, by second nature and just like
Yeah,
applying it and just feeling your way through it.
yeah,
It's how
yeah.
I've always done music and art. But as I
Well,
said, I've recently had to get more technical with my art to get better so that I can forget about it. And I feel like I'm reaching that stage.
yeah,
I can draw
yeah,
stuff now pretty confidently without having to go, oh, how does that work again? I mean, I have to do a little bit of that, which is healthy and enjoyable.
yep,
But yeah, like it's freeing when you get good enough at anything that you can just sort of plunge into it on any given day. That is great. That's like the best feeling, whether it's
yeah.
swimming or, you know, I'm not a sports person, but like I imagine that's what it feels to be a somewhat accomplished sports person. Like once you're on top of the craft, then you can really like lean
Yeah.
into it and so get into it. You know?
Well, like I mean, there are different. There's many places describe singularly drifting into motion. Like in a day's work or the job you're doing or the artwork or the sport you're
Mm.
playing is the flow, man, and that's like a pretty high and ultimate state of consciousness they suggest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would
Yeah.
think that if
Flow
you could
state. Absolutely.
you could translate that into just about anything, man, and time
Yeah.
passes. You look and you go, wow, look at what I did, like that's a beautiful place to be, whenever
Mm.
anyone can get to that sort of thing. Because what I wanted to get to after we segued off into bass playing and intuition and stuff like that is I want to go back to little Aidan, because Aidan, you're not that, I mean, I'm 45, man. So, you pegged me by a year, mate, but I won't hold it against you, all right? So,
Yeah.
we'll take us back to you know I was going to say to not show our age, but I just fucking gave that away. So, I
That's
shot that in the
okay.
foot, didn't I?
So you,
Well, what do you do? It's a live
yes.
show, mate. I'm like 3 feet in front of my head, and my thought. Back, you go back into the 80s and stuff, your little tacker running around doing things. What was the first creative, I guess, influence for you? Was it music? Was it comics? Did you have someone in your house liked, I don't know, a particular
Uh,
band, or used to
it was
read
it
comics?
was music. It was
Yeah,
music, 100%.
yeah.
Um, but it was music in the context of a whole thing, which is movies. So, um, from a very, very young age, probably like yourself, we were digesting movies on TV and VHS,
Hmm.
occasionally at the cinema,
Yeah.
and and I remember that there being a piano in the house and being very, very small, probably 4 or 5, and I wanted to. I think it was Star Wars, but I wanted to like work out how to play. Oh, come on, man! This thing, this thing.
I love it.
I tell you, hang on.
I love it,
Yeah,
man.
it's
I
not going to
love
fall
it.
down now. I remember trying to play the tune. It wasn't the main Star Wars theme. It was one from The Empire Strikes Back.
Mm.
I think it might have it might have been like a little transitional bit of music, something that wasn't one of the main themes. But I remember trying to pick out that melody because it was just going around in my head from watching the
Mm.
movie.
Mm.
Pick it out on the piano, and when I sort of got it, I was like, there's a shape. I remember thinking there's a shape to that, and that's how you play that little tune. And I thought that's magic. I want to do more of that. And then um, I and someone asked me recently what was the first like big musical like oh my god moment, and I remember what it is. It's kind of an unlikely one, but it was hearing uh, it was Great Southern Land by Icehouse on the radio,
Yep. Yep.
and thinking, how do people make that sound? That
Mm.
majestic, cinematic, like magical sound that doesn't sound like me and my dad talking in the car. It sounds like something else from another planet. How do you do that? And I remember just being so spellbound by that. And if you go back and listen to that song, you probably see why a little kid hearing that in the 80s, just like, wow, that just sounds amazing.
Yeah.
It still sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and those were the first seeds of like, I want to do that. And yeah, and I learnt piano when I was a kid. I wasn't very good at like committing to practice and stuff, but I was keen. And then when I
Yeah.
was a teenager, of course, you discover all the big things that you eventually need to know if you're a musician, like the Beatles and all the classics, um, and the Beatles are really where you learn how chords and melodies work together. And yeah, so that was music for so long, but I always scribbled silly pictures. And
Yeah.
then one day I thought I want to start drawing better.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing concept art from Jurassic Park when I was like 13 or whatever it was, by this guy named Crash McCreary. All these like dinosaur concept sketches and stuff. I thought that's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Like it looks magical and unreal, but it's so like the depth in those pencil drawings. I remember I want to do that.
Mm.
With me as a kid, it's like I want to be able to do that, and so I spent my whole life just trying to do those things. And you start by like copying your heroes,
Yeah.
and then you eventually find your own thing and try to finesse that. I guess
Yeah.
that's where I am now in middle age, I suppose. And I'm like, oh, I'm finally doing that thing that I always wanted to do, and now I've got a chance to really get good at it. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I
No,
don't know
that's
if that, I
awesome.
don't know if that, I don't know if that sounds facetious or whatever, but
No, not at all. Doesn't
it's
sound
like,
facetious at all.
it's like
I'm
you
totally
chase
with
the
you,
dream as
mate.
a kid, and even things like I've done some artwork for some like some publications and stuff, and a good friend of mine, Ian, has a website and a magazine and a book as well, all centered around the visual effects industry and visual effects in movies. And I've done
Yeah.
a lot of like artwork for his articles and things, and getting feedback from the people he's interviewed, which are like these seminal figures in the visual effects industry, having them write to me, go, I love, you know, what you did, you know, in conveying what we did back in those movies, like in, you know, Jurassic Park and um, those guys, and having them come back to me and go, I really like what you're doing. It's like, well, I love what you were doing when I was 12. That's really cool. And so it just feeds itself like that. Like, and in the music world, you know, when you meet some of your heroes and when you play with them or whatever, it all comes around into this melting pot of like, oh, everyone's just pursuing what they love doing, and then it influences, you know, the young and the you know the dreamers, and then they take it and they run with it and they do something else with it. I just love that sort of melting pot thing of art and music in, you know, in pop culture, I guess primarily is what I'm talking about here. But
Hmm. Man,
yeah, anyway,
man, please, sir, you may continue. I am totally, I'm right with you, man. It's
okay. So yeah,
music.
I mean, you of all people would know, you know, what I mean when uh, pursuing the thing that you love most as a kid. Um, is it's almost like a way of centering yourself forever. It doesn't matter what you leave behind so much. It's more the act of doing it.
Yeah,
Although we want to leave behind something that um, is beautiful and that resonates with at least one person.
yeah,
I always think after I, I'm, I don't hate performing live, but I never feel like I'm good enough with music. I'm like, damn, I didn't nail that. I'm always like that. But taught myself over the years to go, you know what, if one person comes up to you afterwards and says, that was great, I really liked that, or I like what you do, then it's worth doing it. But if no one says that, maybe it's worth doing it anyway. Who cares? I
Man,
try to teach myself that too.
100% agree with that statement. I think, like a lot of people, like I've met, not as many people as some, and some, more than others. I mean, that's how it is. And you get different people that have different drives, like different wants to, places they want to go. And there's nothing wrong with what anyone wants to do in their life, man. Like whatever your path is, you pursue it as long as it makes you happy, fulfilled, whole, and you ain't out there
Yeah,
hurting anyone else, man. Then you go for it, man. You go. But for
yeah,
me,
that, yeah.
I was for many years, obviously. I mean, I have a sister now that's in my life, but when I was a boy, I was an only child. And obviously, my mum and dad had to work. So I was left with very lots of books, lots of comic books, entertain yourself, do things. I mean, movies, whatever I wanted to do. It was just a huge, as you would say, melting pot of creativity. So I very early on gravitated towards, like comic books was it for me. Music came second, movies and, film and stuff, was a third of equal value. But my strength and what I wanted to do and love was comic books. Those drawings and stuff that I did, I still have. I'm a shocking hoarder, like that's why I've got boxes and boxes of the stuff around. Um, but the fundamental thing that I love most about creativity, and I've said this before, and this is just purely for me and my observation. If people, agree or disagree, that's cool. Creativity has literally, in times gone by, saved my life, man. And without it, I don't know if I'd be the same person that I am now. I certainly believe that, because I used to sit at home in the lounge room and, just draw for the sake of drawing and spend days, man, under a tree or in the yard, just drawing and looking around and just dilly daddling and writing stories. And our family used to travel everywhere, like dad used to love driving in the car. So I'd be in the back seat and I'd just have pages and pages of notepads of stories and stories and stories, man. And I'd just love it. And very much like yourself, man. I I came into comics. My comic battle for Bustle. So you've got some context for you, because this is what I like about you. You're talking to me some good stuff that I am resonating with you, because you started your project in 2006. I was drawing comic book ideas in 90, all through school and stuff. But my father passed away in 1998, and I had a whole heap of stuff. And I decided, boy, I'm doing a comic book for dad. And to this day, I'm still doing Battle for Bustle. I'm still drawing it. And that was that long ago. And it wasn't until 2021 that I finally had people, my friends, were going like, man, you cannot just keep doing this for yourself, mate. Like you've got to put this stuff out there. While I'm very thankful that my friends, like gave me the nudge to put it out there, because with that encouragement has come like some of the most awesome moments I could possibly ever have imagined, man. Like, one of them is Chinwag, meeting yourself, meeting people, meeting heroes that I never thought that, like I'm reading their comics as a kid, I'll never meet these people. And suddenly, like you get to have conversations and talk to them and stuff, like mind blowing shit, really. But I think that if it wasn't for them, I would still just be sitting in my little studio here, man, nutting out comic books just for me. because I love it. And you lose track of love for what you're creating sometimes, man. And I think you got to be your number one audience, you know. And there's
Yeah.
nothing, you know, and there's nothing better than getting that first person goes, ooh, you know, that's pretty good. You know, like when you see it in format and stuff, you know. And oh
Yeah,
man,
you like to think that that wouldn't matter, but it does. It does because we're as you know, human beings um, need others, you know, to thrive, you know, properly. I think you need to bounce ideas, and that's why people love beers and conversations, or tea and conversations, as it were, on the balcony.
don't
Um,
take it. You can talk about beer all you like, mate. So let's do it.
but you know what I mean, like that, like people share,
Yep.
and they need to share, and yeah, that's the beautiful thing about it. Like your long-standing project is a very deeply intimate one, uh, and you know, you may not feel like sharing that, and that's totally cool. You can just do it for yourself, and that is just as valid as putting something out for other people to read. But you know you I think you're probably also the type of personality that um, that is a way that you can connect to others. Go, look, I wrote this comic. I don't know if it's about your dad, but um, for the memory of him. I think that's a really beautiful way to sort of crystallize all those feelings, and like there's comic artists like Robert Crumb is one I can think of. It puts incredibly intimate stuff into a serialized form.
Mhm.
It's a great way of communicating. Um,
I think
my
it's
stuff,
beautiful,
my
mate.
stuff is a little more veiled than that, I suppose. But I
Mhm.
think everything that we do as creators has ourselves infused in it, 100%.
Well,
Um,
perhaps on the surface, your comic book maybe, as you say, veiled. Yet earlier in our chat this evening, you were mentioning your dear friend that
yeah,
you know.
yeah, he's actually going to play a role in it. He's actually going to play a role in it. Named
Yeah,
David. That's all I'm going to say.
yeah,
But it's weird because I promised him I'd finish this, but I'm really doing it for me because
Mhm.
it was my idea that night going across the Harbour Bridge.
Yeah.
Um, but I thought, wouldn't it be great if there was some way that he was looking down somehow? I think he'd be really pleased with it,
Yeah,
and that makes me really happy. And
yeah,
that other people dig it too. That's awesome.
yeah,
And I'm happy with it. So that then it was worth the doing.
yeah.
And the reason it's taken so long is because there's all these other pursuits that I've needed to pursue at the time. Tubular
Well, I
Bells
mean,
is another one which I can talk about.
oh,
Um,
Mike Oldfield, don't get me started. You
well,
know,
all I'll say is I don't want to go too far into it now, but it's the most unlikely things that you do, mucking around with your mates that turn out to be uh, like a bit of a rocket ship, a trajectory. So
mm,
that one, if you Google my name, you will probably
mm,
find stuff related to Tubular Bells for Two, which is a show where I myself and another musician perform Tubular Bells with just the two of us and like 25 instruments on stage and loop pedals and stuff. And that, of course, became it had an automatic audience, fans of the
yeah,
album.
yeah.
And it became a hit show, and that sort of took me around the world, and it was really cool for a while. But I couldn't do that forever, and because it's like that is a lot of fun, and that is like in some ways quite creatively satisfying. But there's more I need to do. I need to
Mm,
do this. What I'm doing now is what I've
mm.
really been wanting to get around to. So yeah, I'm pleased that it's happening now.
Man,
You know.
I'm pleased it's happening for you because I man, I must say, Aidan, that I enjoy Chinwags. Chinwags are like my kids. I don't have a particular favorite, and I look back on all of them fondly. But I most certainly am enjoying this one, mate. Um,
Me too,
uh,
Leigh.
where we definitely are traveling a similar train of creative thought, man, and drive. And I very much am enjoying this. And I'm glad you are as well, because
Yeah,
yeah,
likewise, mate.
it's good. It's good. I love the fact that that like everything, like what I like about, I guess, what your friend gave you from the idea was that initial like, that's the go, that's the one, man. You think about that little nudge.
Mm,
My dad wasn't alive when I conceived the idea of Battle for Bustle.
mm,
But what he did when he was alive is he germinated the idea in me
mm.
that you're no better than, but you're just as good as. And if you want it, you can do it. And
Absolutely.
it took me a long time to realize that, like everyone has their own voice and stuff like that. And anyone that is out there, there's a gentleman I'm speaking to right now is probably the purest form of motivation that you could get to pursue a project, because I am not aware, man. And to be honest with you, anyone that knows me, bud, I don't really follow awards and stuff. I mean, I obviously have different motivations and things, but I applaud people that get them. You know what I mean? It's like, that's fantastic. It's like, I 100% applaud you. I applaud the effort that goes into organizing the shows. I mean, there's so many things. Again, like people don't realize the foundational building that goes into everything. And I think the creativity is not just painting and drawing and things, but it could be anything that you want to do, whether it's cooking or sword fighting or whatever, or organizing shows. Now, the one thing that I would say from memory is that I'm not 100% sure, man, that someone, I could be wrong. Now, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I'm not going to get an answer from anyone because we're not live, obviously. We're pre recorded. And, I'm probably wrong. I'm always wrong. Sometimes I'm right, maybe.
But
I don't know.
are there going to be comments? Will there be comments
Ah,
popping up?
if we're live, there would be, but but not now. Like, we're just talking, man. Like, and I like that sometimes, because comments can veer you off in different areas and stuff. But I'm not sure if I recall someone actually winning an award with their first piece of work, to bring it out. That would be interesting. I would really like to know when people watch the show, if they can contact me or Sis or anything like that and suggest it. Because if that has not happened, then even more kudos to you, man. Because, you must have certainly taken them by storm, mate. So well done. Now, Robert Crumb. That was someone that obviously sticks in your mind. When did you come across Robert Crumb?
Mm. I remember my brother reading some of his stuff when I was little, like probably late 80s, early 90s, it would have been. And there was a movie 20 years ago, maybe. I was like, oh, that's about that comic book artist. I can't remember it now. And it had, I think it was Paul Giamatti in it.
Hmm.
And it was about Robert Crumb and his wife and their story. And I remember going, that's an amazing story. That guy is like how he could become such a successful comic artist doing kind of wild and very personal stuff. I
Mm.
thought it was so cool and so different. Um, yeah, I'm like I said, I know what I like in the comics world, and I read fairly widely.
Yep.
But I'm not as well versed, as the comic book store guy in all of the artists and how they connect, and
Yep.
to some degree, obviously I am,
Yeah.
but I remember his work really sticking out to me as something very different, and
Yep.
uh, um, and I really loved that. There was another artist who wrote a series. Jesus, what was his name now? But the series was called Stray Bullets.
I know the book. I don't know who the artist or writer is, though.
Yeah, so it's one guy, I think, does the whole thing. And I remember thinking that was very violent and very like small town, troubled people. I
Yeah.
remember this is grim, but it's so compelling and
Yeah.
and quite funny. I remember thinking when I read that, shit, this is good. This is wild and different. And geez, comics can be anything, can't they?
Huh?
I've never really been drawn into the big properties, like the big DC and Marvel stuff. Never really
Yep.
got sucked into it. My favorite comics are the ones that like just live in the fringes and sort of pop out because they're a little bit different. Yeah, and then there's some artists who really traverse both worlds. One of my favorite artists is an Australian, Nicola Scott, and her comic Black Magic is just one of my favorite things on the page ever. With Greg Rucker, I think, was the writer. But her art is just knocks my socks off. She won the Ledger Award the previous year, I think.
Yeah. Right.
But she's now doing Wonder Woman and all those DC. She's in sort of DC land now, which is cool. It's kind of cool to see her art in that sphere.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I've again digressed a little bit, but
No, you didn't at all, man. We're
got
just
Robert
talking.
Crumb. Robert Crumb, I see as like he's the ultimate like scratchy pen,
Hmm?
late night, put it all on the page guy,
Yeah.
and I really admire that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, man, he's one of those artists, I guess, the comic book artist that has transcended into American art. Like he is recognized as one
Fine,
of the
fine.
great
Yeah.
artists, like not just a comic book artist. So he's a man that threw it out there, mate. Like there was nothing was taboo with him. Like I admire that the truthfulness in that man. I think there's in a world that at the moment that we live in that probably doesn't allow for too many voices, man. You know what I mean? To really say what they want to say. There are some people like Robert Crumb that did, like just didn't care, mate. Like this is what's on my mind, and this is what like I've got to say. Like it or don't like it, And that's very courageous in itself, mate. Like and courage.
Absolutely.
That courage is always takes a big step, man. Like to throw your convictions out there to the world, mate. Like and allow people to maul them or love them. Like according to their taste and things like that. But that's the risk we all run, isn't it?
That's right.
But it is a lovely thing. It's what you were saying about issue 2, like and how you were talking about as you've done issue 1 and now you're starting to notice and pick up a few different bits and pieces that are attracting you to artwork and all that. What I have been remiss about is talking to you about your writing process, because writing is also an incredibly important part of the comic book field, obviously, especially when you're a writer and an artist. So what, I guess, are your influences with writing? Is it from a theatre background and liking things like Shakespeare, or were you, like appreciate novels or, your comic books?
Yeah,
Where writing come
all of the
from?
above. All of the above. I I've always been, I have a like pretty keen radar for what um, is compelling writing and what doesn't work. And most people do. When you see a movie that feels wrong, there's
Mm.
something about it that feels hokey or it's not doesn't land properly.
Yep.
It's almost certainly due to the writing.
Yep.
Um, Writing, in an immediate form of writing like comics and movies and television and theatre, things where you're watching characters do stuff and go through stuff. The dialogue is the thing of primary importance that will or the lack of it. Um, you know, is going to tell the story properly, and
Mm.
so I guess movies and plays and things where dialogue hits the right mark is what I've always been inspired by. It's a very vague thing to say, but let me try and think of an example. Try and think of an example of what I'm talking about. Um, Look, there, we were watching this show called Yellowstone with Kevin Costner the other night, and there are lines in that show, like the whole premise of the show and the way it's executed and stuff is very watchable and it's very quite compelling and
Mm.
like it's pretty good, except
Mm.
sometimes you can hear the people writing the show.
Mm.
And the actors are like struggling through these lines that they must have hated. But and I remember one of the main characters, Beth, and her like adopted brother, they're sort of at war. Um, and she says to her brother, "Okay, so it's war now," and he says, "The war's over, Beth." And then I was like, "I know what line is coming next. I know what freaking line is coming next." And she turns around and says, "No, Jamie, the war has just begun." And I'm like, "You can't put that in there."
Yeah.
I said, as an audience, that's insulting. I know the war has just begun because I saw what you did to him. I saw what you're trying to manipulate. I know the war's just begun, like, and there's another half a season to go. I know. You don't have to tell us. And I feel that sort of, like, the audience deserves real characters that speak, even if it's in a heightened sort of, you know, kind of fantastical way, you
Mm.
still have to just buy it. And I am going on a tangent here, but one of the best screenwriters I think in that regard, that's just like gets it right somehow, is hasn't written that many movies that you're familiar with. His name's Hampton Fancher, and he wrote the
Mm.
screenplay for Blade Runner.
Blade Runner. Yeah. And they brought him
And
into the second one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you can really hear it because the whole concept of, those of you who know Blade Runner love it as much as I do.
Mm.
The whole concept and the execution and obviously the casting and stuff, it is like perfectly put together. But it would fall flat if it didn't have this dialogue that just felt real. And
Yeah.
he's the master of that. And so let's fast forward to make it about specifically, my book and how I had started writing. I was like, right, well, I've got this like overarching, very grandiose, like prose like short stories that use language, in creative ways, like Shakespeare. It's beautiful to read and listen to. But is it going to work coming out of
Mm.
speech bubbles in a comic? No. So I had to rewrite the whole thing to make you understand what's happening, and to have the characters speaking, but only in a way that is going to propel the story properly. Like, otherwise, they don't need to speak at all.
Yep.
And so I had to really pare it back. And I'd written all this dialogue, and then by the time I started drawing the comic, I was like, she doesn't need to say half this stuff. I'll just show it. And so most of the dialogue in the first book is her talking to her the AI that runs the ship, purely procedural information that they're exchanging, and that's deliberate, because I think it draws you into a full sense of security. Like, this is all routine, and this is kind of a boring mission, and just a regular conversation she's having with the flight computer. And then when stuff starts to go wrong, she doesn't know what to say, and that I really enjoyed that. I was like, how to present that. I was like, so the latter half of the comic hardly has any dialogue in it, and anyway.
And
so writing it, I guess, was like a screenplay.
Did you find at that point where you realised that the dialogue wasn't necessary is where your, how shall I say, your chops for your drawing and your storytelling in a panel sense started getting a little bit more, like
bit of a workout.
Yeah,
because then, like, stuff like panel hierarchy and framing and what you're showing and how becomes very, very crucial.
Yeah.
And I don't like to use a lot of like sound effects in my stuff. The occasional thing, but I like to just show it through the, you get the impression that someone's been shot with something by the after effect of it, not like a bang and a schlock. So in writing, but see, I sort of wrote it like a screenplay, but of course that's not that useful for a comic. A comic needs to say, panel 1, this happens, and she says this. Panel 2, this happens, and now we see this come in, and blah. It's functional. It doesn't need to read like a play or a screenplay. So anyway, to try and answer your question a bit more succinctly, all the best things that I've ever read make me forget that a person wrote it and just sweep me up in it, and that's always been the mission, is to just write it in such a way that it just like has a life of its own and tells itself when the person's reading it. And that's tricky to do, and there's probably a few clunky things in it. Again, that's one of those things you have to let go. You can't just keep fine-tuning stuff forever. You got to let some things be slightly clunky and learn from them. And
nothing's like, even life, mate. You can't control everything about life, can you? And being the artist, you do have to let some things go. Or God, you'd still be drawing a comic book since 1998, mate, and you'd be, like me. So like, you got to let some things go.
Probably. Probably by the time this thing's finished, I'll be 70. But no, I'm hoping it moves a bit quicker than that. But
yeah. Hey, Aidan, your microphone just dropped back a little bit of sound there, bud. So just so people, when they're watching, don't miss any of the important info that you say, man. So just like to let them know.
No worries. Hopefully that.
Hopefully that's just thought I'd throw your flag there, bud. Because I don't want people to miss what you've got to say. Hey, on 2 notes, I would absolutely love to know. Well, actually 3, I guess. And 1 question: you're writing. You've taken a lot of time with your artwork. You've got better and better and better. Your script required work, and you got better and better and better and better at it. So you're growing as an artist there. What did you have a particular let's say they're both, like they're your babies. Did you like one more than the other? The process, did one process stick out more than the other? One more satisfying, anything like that?
Yeah. Oh, look, I think probably the most enjoyable part is was putting the pencils down and
Yeah,
seeing the action start to visually take shape. Um, that informed the writing again. Like that made me rewrite it. Like I'd finish a few pages, and you can
yeah,
see a scene happening without any dialogue or, you know, boxes or anything like that. You can see it happening, and then I go, oh, cool, I can go rewrite that scene to get the dialogue and stuff just right so that it serves what I'm looking at, because it's
yeah,
primarily comics as a visual medium.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, that was like, it was great having the first draft of the script, well, a refined draft. I was like, man, I can see that. That's gonna be great. But it wasn't until I started to actually draw it that it really started to get a little bit of a life of its own, and that
yeah,
was really satisfying. And when I'd finally finished the art for that first book, um, yeah, I was like, cool, look at that. I can see it now. I can see that whole first 40 pages. That's really cool. That was thrilling, and I thought, oh, it's easy from here. Of course, there's a lot more to do, but
yeah. The work has only just begun. Now,
yeah,
I love the fact that, man, I also, obviously, I write a lot of my work, like I've worked with other people. I've had co-writers and I've written myself and stuff. And man, I honestly, if anyone asked me how I structure my writing, I couldn't honestly tell you, man, because I think I just do anything absolutely, in any way. I have a really weird way, just to let you know how I work, seeing we're talking. I sort of come in with ideas. I hit the paper knowing what I want to do and sort of build from there. Sometimes I have blocks of, like script. Other times I just have layouts of pages, but I know in my mind what I want to put there, but I'm just not at that particular point in time eloquent enough, I guess, to, or articulate enough to do the scripts and decide to come back later. So in a really strange way, I'm a bit like hodgepodge like that, man. I admire people that have their particular methods of, whether I've seen scripts in screenplay form, I've seen scripts in, like panel form. I think for me, like I love like how you're discussing, the creative process, because there's so many different creative processes, and I don't really think there's one that's right in general. I think it's whatever works for the person that is doing the creating. You know what I mean? And because God, if you saw my script, you'd be looking at me going like, Leigh, what the fuck is this, man? You know what I mean? But in my mind, it all works. Like, but that's just how my brain works. But all right, man, I'm gonna Blade Runner. Let's go back to Blade Runner, because as children of the '80s, I grew up with families, and being a single child, that when my uncles, who were like 10 years older than me, so they're sort of older brothers, and my aunts are similar ages, you know what I mean? They had this little kid running around, and it was like, oh, go away, like we've got boyfriends and girlfriends now, rack off. So they used to, get videos out and stuff like that from Video Easy and Blockbuster and, blah, 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 whatever else they were called and things. And, you know, my mum and dad were pretty cool. They were always working and stuff, but they were very open with, like what I was watching. Some of the things I was watching, you probably wouldn't let your kids watch now, but you know what I mean? Because I was with my uncles, and my aunts, you got a whole myriad of things that you could watch. Blade Runner was one of the things that gravitated to me as a child. Dune was David Lynch's Dune was one that gravitated to me as a child. Please don't get me started on Dune. I'm obsessed with it, and people that have watched the show enough are probably going, "Oh my God, don't get me started on Dune." So I'm going to stop that there. Just check out David
Yeah,
Lynch's
that's
Dune.
another
Unbelievable.
conversation, Jim.
That's right.
Now,
That's right. Now, man, your sound's just dropping out there. So watch
yeah,
that. While
you
you're
know
working
why?
with why?
Because I've had to turn the car on to keep my battery from conking out.
Okay.
And what it's doing is it won't let me have the car on without my phone connected to the Bluetooth system. So can you hear me enough for a couple of minutes like this?
Yeah, man. Yep, can do. So what we'll do is we'll come to the Blade Runner. Whoop, in the Blade Runner. Now, as a child of the 80s, do you prefer Blade Runner with the narration? Do you prefer the director's cut that came out years later with no narration? Or do you prefer the 2007 final cut that Ridley Scott went back in and did? And the big question here, do you think Deckard is a replicant? Let's just take 2049 out of it for a little while and let's just stay in the 80s.
Okay. And just double checking you can hear me.
Yep.
Okay, good. I think I prefer the version I grew up with was the director's cut, which came out on video in like 1992, I think.
Uh-huh.
That was the version that I saw first when I was like 13. And that was perfect. Then I became aware that there were other versions of the movie. You know, it wasn't as easy to come across these things in the 90s as it is now. But I knew there was this theatrical version that had this horrible, happy driving into the sunset ending and this boneheaded, like, Raymond Chandler voiceover thing. And I really wanted to see it. I was like, I want to see if that works. But you couldn't find it anywhere. And so the first time I'd seen that was in that DVD release 20 years ago, maybe.
Yep.
Where all 5 versions, or 2007 it was, yeah. So where all 5 versions were included. So I went straight to watch it. I thought, for me, it doesn't work. Because I don't need to hear what Deckard's thinking after he's met Rachel in the Tyrell Corporation. I don't need to hear him talk about that. Because we just saw it. And I want to think about that for myself. I'd much rather watch his face through the window of the spinner, like digest it all. And so I feel like the movie, it wasn't allowed to breathe with that horrible voiceover on it. And Harrison Ford hated it, and you can hear it in the performance. So that, and I think Ridley Scott hated it. But so from that perspective, the director's cut absolutely wins. And then the final cut, I like what he did. He shifted a couple of things and to clarify things a little bit. Sure, I can see that. Fixed up a couple of visual effects, which is a bit naughty, but worked fine. It's a beautiful version of the movie, but I think the director's cut is the one. Is Deckard a replicant? I'm in the camp of absolutely not. He's absolutely not a replicant. Because why would, how does that serve the story of him, falling in love with the very thing he's supposed to destroy, if he is one himself? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. That flat blinds it. It doesn't provide any friction for what he's going through. And also, he's not a very good not a very good replicant if he is one. Because, like, Bryant pulls him back from retirement and says, I need you, I need your magic, I need the old Blade Runner back. This is a bad one. These replicants are nasty work, and only you know how to sort of sort them out. I don't think they'd make a replicant like Deckard, unless he's like some super early crap model that is not self-aware and but is good at hunting replicas. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
But the tantalizing what ifs, they're interesting. The funny glowing eyes and all that stuff. Like, I like that.
Yeah.
But I don't
Well,
like there being this definitive. Yeah, he's a replica, and like Ridley Scott is a goon. He's gone out there and said, no, of course he's a replica. That's what I meant all along. Yeah, that doesn't work for me. I'd much rather I see him.
I'm in your camp. Mate. I grew up with the narration. I liked it, but I saw the director's cut. It flowed beautifully to me. I didn't need the narration. I've always thought Deckard was a human. And look, really, that's about where it sits for me too. I do love the air of mystery. I do love the dreaming that, it has provided for myself, and obviously you and other people that are huge fans of the work over the years, and that's some of the greatest storytelling, man, is leaving that taste, you know what I mean? Like, to always want to go back and know, like exactly, like what is happening. But that depends on the individual, doesn't it? But it's a beautiful thing. Now, mate, because you got the car on and you're at the Coles, mini mart, petrol station and stuff, you've been an absolute legend this evening. I want to keep you here forever and a day, but I don't want you pushing the car home, at some point tonight. You know what I mean? Because the reason why, everyone, Aidan is in the car is because he's got a young daughter, and she is sleeping, and he's a very thoughtful dad, and has decided that to let her sleep, because young ones need their time and growth and that sort of stuff.
I hope she is sleeping.
Oh, there you go. So you could be going back into like, Dad's back, like, that's also exciting in a way, like,
hey, so listen, is the sound better again?
Yeah, sounds better now. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? I just had to mess with a couple of things. So we can talk for a couple more minutes, but I probably should get back home before long.
That's cool, man.
But
that's
at least the sound's a bit better, and I've got air conditioning, so I'm good.
Ah, beautiful. Mate, I basically thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for communicating, and like, we worked it out over the last couple of weeks, and even though I guess we've had to block you in a car in a Coles service station, you know what I mean, like, for us to talk, and for people that don't know you to get to meet you and stuff like that, man.
It's a memorable experience.
Man, I greatly appreciate it, and I'm so grateful for it. You've got no idea, man. Like, and thank you so much. Now, there's two things that I always like to do the best I can to ask of everyone as we wind down the show. Now, the first one, which I think you've covered, but I'm going to ask it again. Why? Why have you gone through the pain of 5 years and writing to get these things out? What's the one thing that you would tell a young person? This is why I did it.
Why? Because I have always, because no matter what is going on in the world and life, I think there's always room to dream something up and make it happen, and that's how we stay inspired to keep living in this world we're in. I find great comfort in the fact that you can create something that didn't exist before. I find that really exciting. I think that's a privilege that humans have over all other species, and one that we should use for good, or at the very least use to entertain people and contribute to, the culture of humanity, and that can be, that can be Mozart, or it can be, little old anyone scribbling away their weird little comics in the attic. It, like, everyone is contributing to the reason we're here. I just think that gives me great comfort, and on a less esoteric level, I just want to make cool stuff that works and is enjoyable, and
Yeah.
and because that's what we're all here to enjoy,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's why.
Yeah. I reckon they're two pretty damn good answers, man. And I absolutely with you on that. Now, for everyone that is at home and will have watched this, and mate, if they like you half as much as I do, you're going to sell out of your run of, Dead City Lullabies pretty swift. So,
Well,
where could someone go, Aidan, to purchase the Australian Arts Awards of Australia, otherwise known as the Ledger's #1 award-winning comic book of the year?
well, as yet there are no physical copies of it, but that's about to change.
Oh, very good. Yes.
Details of
Exclusives?
I can't tell you anything just yet, but there is going to be it's going to be a book. So part one is going to be released properly, and you'll be able to find it on my website and at comic book stores and various outlets. But you can read it for free on my Substack. So if you just Google Dead City Lullabies, you'll find that Substack, and subscribe, and you'll get all the updates. And there's all the world building and all this other bits and pieces that I keep on the Substack. But it's also got issue 1 there to read for free right now. So that's where to start.
So they can read issue 1 on your Substack, but they can also get a little bit of an inkling of like how your brain worked with things and background.
Yeah, man.
Like
I've used the Substack as kind of like the DVD extras sort of thing. It's got quite a wealth of process and concept artwork, and even music and writing and all sorts of stuff. So please subscribe and go back and read all the posts, and if you're interested, there's a lot there for you to read, and you can order a print if you like, and you can read the first issue right now. And that is
where do people get your beautiful artwork, man, with ballpoint pen that we were talking about before, that you haven't got rid of any of these pages? We want to get some pages out there. There's original art collection.
I appreciate the chance for a plug. Well, go to my website, which is aidanrobertsillustration.com. It's Aidan, AIDAN, robertsillustration.com, and you'll find it. And you can have a look at all my other stuff too that I've done, which is not this. So please check those 2 things out.
Excellent, mate. Thank you so very, very much for this evening. Man, I've enjoyed this immensely, Aidan. I certainly hope that I do get the opportunity to have a chat with you again, man.
Me too, mate. And let's stay in touch. I've really enjoyed talking to you. Thanks so much for having me on. It's a great pleasure for me. So thank you.
Yeah, no, wicked, mate. Lovely. I love it. Thank you. And mate, congratulations. And I wish you every success, man. All right. So,
that's very kind, man. Thank you so much.
No problem. All right, everyone. So that was Aidan, and go and check it out. You know where you can find him. You see what the man's all made up about. He's a cool dude, and his artwork's cool. Everything about it's cool, man. It's all good. So Hey, don't forget that the show tonight has been sponsored by the Comex shop. They've got over 100 Australian comic book titles in there. Like you can jump on that website. Friday night drinking draws back. There's the panel comic thing on Thursday nights with Ed Kearsley and the crew. There's varying people, like showing their artwork and stuff at different times. You can stay updated if you like and subscribe the channel. And, all those likes and subscriptions and stuff, help the internety thingies and the interwebbies and, increase numbers and make all this content more available to everyone that enjoys comic books and meeting creators and watching people draw and all of the things that make the world go round and make us all happy. So I am going to wish you all the best. I'm going to wish Aidan all the best. And just everyone remember that mental health is something that's close to my heart. I always try and plug, I'll make people aware at the end of these shows, mate. You haven't heard from one of your mates or a family member for a little while, send them a text, pick up the phone, give them a ring, because just that little effort can put a smile on their face, can change your situation. You never know, it may even save a life somewhere down the track, so it doesn't hurt and it doesn't cost anything to be kind. So reach out, take care, look after yourselves, and community is unity. See you later. See you, buddy.
Peace, man. Thanks so much.
Oh, well.
This show is sponsored by the Comex shop. Check out comex.cx for all things Comex and find out what Comex is